everyone! This is a tutorial for how to assemble my Supergirl boot pattern, which can be found in my Etsy store. So this is basically a boot cover which is stuck onto an existing shoe, which I'll get into later. So I'm starting off assembling the pattern pieces. I'm just trimming off the excess here, ready to tape everything together. And I'm just cutting out my pieces here. I am using a rotary cutter, but this is a blunt blade, not one I'm going to use on my fabric. And here are all the pieces. So cut out everything as indicated except for this one, which I believe is piece G. I'm cutting it out like this, so the top edge I'm leaving the same, but I'm going to add excess fabric around the longer edge, as you will see in a second. So the reason for this is that I designed this pattern based on a specific pair of boots, and most boots don't look exactly the same in the front, so if you cut excess fabric, once it's all glued down you can just cut away the excess and it will be the right shape. It's better to have too much fabric than too little. And now I'm just cutting out the rest of the pieces. This one's the lining. This is for the Spandex panels. All the fabric information is in the instructions. So now I'm just going to lay out the pattern in order so that I can make sure everything's going to be in the right place when I start clipping it all together. So now what I'm doing is on pieces E and C, I'm folding the edge over by about 1 centimetre to create a hem there. I'm just folding it over once, not a rolled hem. And I'm going to do a rolled hem this time on the lining piece, and this is also going to be about 1 centimetre wide when it's finished. So I'm just clipping that in place, ready to sew. And I'm just using a basic straight stitch here with a Teflon foot for the leather. So now I'm just ironing my interfacing onto the top of piece A, and I'm also just giving everything a quick iron whilst I'm there. Only ironing the leather from the back so I don't melt it. And then I'm just making sure everything's in the right order again, and I'm going to start clipping things together ready to sew. It's really important not to stretch the spandex while you're doing this. So I'm starting off by attaching pieces E and D together, and then I will do B and C. So whilst sewing these down, first of all I'm doing a zigzag stitch, but it's really important to have the spandex on the bottom and the leather on the top, otherwise the spandex will get all stretched and out of shape. So now I'm just doing the same thing that we just did, only I'm attaching these side pieces to the main piece A. It's really important to start from the bottom and work up and not stretch the spandex again whilst you're doing this, otherwise they won't be level. And then I'm just sewing it in again with the leather on top. The next step is attaching piece G to piece A. So what I'm doing here is I'm folding each piece in half and then just making a little marking there so I know where the center point is, and that will help with lining them up. So to attach these pieces, I'm top stitching. The pieces don't line up exactly, so you want to overlap piece G slightly onto A and then move piece A underneath whilst you're doing it. I find it easiest to start from the middle and work my way out and then flip around and do the other side. And I'm also using a roller foot here for the leather. So now it's time to add the lining. With the rolled hem facing upwards, I'm placing it down onto the leather like this and clipping in place. The lining is a bit smaller than the leather, so you'll have to kind of move it about a bit for it to match up. And I'm also only clipping it down to where it will meet the spandex panel, so there'll be like a little bit of fabric at the end which isn't currently attached to anything. And I'm just going to use a straight stitch to sew that down. Again, leaving the ends unsewn. So now I'm just turning that the right way out. And what I'm going to do is clip most of that seam allowance away, aside from like the last inch or so of stitching. So now I'm going to use this webbing tape as well as some cotton to iron this down. So because you don't want to melt the leather by putting the iron on it directly, this cotton really helps to avoid that. So I'm just giving it a quick press on both sides just to keep it in place, and then to secure the last bit of lining I'm using strips of this hemming web. So I'm putting one along the bottom first, and now I'm going to get two smaller strips to essentially create a hem on either side of that, so you can see that I'm turning it under now, and then I'm going to press that in place to secure it so there won't be any raw edges visible from the lining. I'm doing that on both sides. And this is just me inserting the zipper. You can use either a regular zipper or an invisible one, that's up to you. And just over the end of the zipper, I've done a bit of straight stitching just to secure it and make sure that you can't pull the zipper off. And this is the boot I'm going to be using. It's an ankle boot made out of leather fabric, and as you can see it has a stretchy panel. To prepare it, I've just used a craft knife to sort of slash all over it. It just helps the glue stick better. And this is some double-sided tape, and I'm just going to attach this all around the boot. This is just going to be temporary, so I'm going to peel this off later. And this is just going to be to kind of test the fit and see how much fabric we need to cut off. So for a start, I'm going to line the zipper up with the very back of the shoe. And then I'm just sort of pressing the rest of it down into that tape so it's secured. And then I'm just going to kind of move it around and smooth it out as I go until I have a kind of shape that I'm happy with. Something that actually looks like a boot. And now I'm just taking my knife and I'm just sort of gently going around where the shoe meets the sole and just kind of slightly digging in, so I'm not actually cutting the leather, I'm just making a mark. And now that I've pulled it up, you can kind of see that it's left a line there for me to cut the excess off. And now I'm just taking all of that tape off. So now I'm going to use this leather repair glue to stick this on here. I'm starting off with this back section and then I'll get to the front afterwards. This stuff dries pretty fast actually, so you should work in small sections. And I'm doing like I did with the tape, where I'm just starting off by lining up the zipper and just kind of smoothing it out as I go. To secure it this time, I'm using some cheap pins that I don't really care about, and I'm pushing them in with this tool. It was from like a press stud set. But yeah, I'm just attaching these. They're basically going through the leather into the sole of the shoe, and they're going to secure it in place while it's drying. Moving on to the front, I've just covered all the front now, and I'm just pulling the leather into place again, making sure it's smoothing out as I go and adding pins everywhere. I also found that leaving the sort of top inch or so of the boot on the front anyway, without any glue on it, was quite helpful. It kind of just made the shape look a bit nicer afterwards. And this is how the boot's looking. I'm also just sort of pressing at it from the inside to help smooth it out a bit. And then I will go and do my second boot. So the back of my leather is bright white, so I'm using this red paint to just go over that line so it's less obvious. You can use any paint you want, it just needs to be the same colour as the leather. And you don't need to be super neat either. In a second I take a Q-tip and I'm just going and wiping away all of the excess. So the boots in the show, the sides of the soles are bright red like the boots are. So I'm just going in with this sponge brush thing and some red acrylic paint all around the edge like this. I'm also doing this whilst the pins are still in there, so the glue is still drying. The glue takes about 24 hours to dry in total. So now I'm removing the pins because the glue is dry. I'm doing it with a pair of pliers just to make things easier. And in a minute I'm going to go over all of that acrylic paint with a sealer. So I'm using Hex Flex by Polyprops, and I'm putting that all over the paint as well as kind of in the gap between the leather and the sole. And that's it. These are the boots. I'm really happy with how these have turned out. Let me know what you think and if you have any questions. Also, thank you to everyone who's subscribed already. And thank you for watching.